Alright, hey guys, it's Miss Summers with some how-tos, some tips when you're graphing. How do you know to choose what kind of graph to use, how to set it up so that your graph is helpful to people that are reading it. Okay, so I have a couple examples. I'm not going to make like 2 full graphs. I'll just kind of walk you through what I expect to see you do for your assignment. Okay, so to start, I have my graph paper, which I've just printed off, which you can tell because of that, but that's okay. I won't use that part. So you can just print graph paper off from online, or you can get some at the store, whatever's easier for you. I also have a straight edge that I'm going to use to draw my axes. Generally, I would recommend doing graphs in pencil so that if you make a mistake, you can erase it. I'm going to use marker or pen just so that you can see my work a little easier. Okay, so I have my data table here. Okay, this is my first example. We have latitude versus average temperature, and we've got some numbers. Okay, so I'm going to remember that all graphs need, I'm going to write it up here, ILS. All right, all graphs need tails. Okay, so the first thing we need is a title. Title does not have to be like super creative. You just want what is your graph about. So I'm going to entitle my graph latitude versus temperature. Easy squeezy. Okay, it doesn't have to be any more complex than that. Okay, the next thing I need are my axes, and this is where my straight edge comes into play. All right, so I'm going to scoot my title just about there. I want to make sure I have enough room. All right, I'm going to pick one of these lines. And the nice thing about graph paper is you can just follow one of these lines, but I like to use a ruler because I like to be nice and neat, or as best as I can, you know. And I'm going to make this is my y-axis, so y is vertical, and my x-axis is horizontal. Okay, I still remember my 3rd grade teacher, Miss Griffith. She used to tell us that they were yucky x-rays. That's how you remember the y and the x-axis. All right, so we have our title, we have our axes. Now we need our intervals, and actually I'm going to do the L first. So really it's talus, not tails, but you know, we made a word. Okay, I'm going to label it first. So here's my y-axis, here's my x-axis. Remember that the y-axis is the dependent variable. I'm going to write dv for dependent variable. X is the independent variable, or IV. So you look at your data and you say, okay, what is the thing that that is independent, and what is the thing that's being changed by that, or the dependent? So does the latitude change the temperature, or does the temperature change the latitude? And the answer is the latitude changes the temperature. Latitude changes the temperature. So my latitude is going to go down here, latitude, and make sure I have space so I can put my numbers up here. And I see that I have a unit. It is in the degrees north, okay, which we talked about yesterday. That's basically how far you are from the equator in the northern hemisphere. My y-axis is going to be average temperature, and again, I'm going to make sure that I include the unit degrees Celsius, because degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius are 2 different things. Okay, so you have to add that. Remember, numbers by themselves don't make sense. You got to have a unit. Okay, now we need, so we have our title, our axes, our labels. Now we're going to look at the intervals and the size. Okay, this is where you need to go back to your data table. So let's start on the x-axis. I'm going to look at my latitude. So I see my smallest number is 5, and it goes all the way up to 55. So I got to figure out how to fit all those numbers here. And here I actually am going to use a pencil because I might have to change some things. Generally we're going to start, you would start at 0 here. If you were starting with a really big number, you could do this thing called a break, where it's basically like you pretend to skip a whole lot because you don't need those numbers, and that helps with the size of your graph. So let's try every 2, we go by 10. So we have 10, 20, and then I'm doing this in pencil so I can go back and change it if I need to. So if I go by every 2, that means I only use this much of the graph. I want to use more of the graph, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to change that. I'm going to adjust that somehow. I'm going to figure something out. Let's see. What if we started at 5, and then every 2 we went by 5s? Okay, so we start at 5, and then we go 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. That works. Okay, and now I'm using almost all of my x-axis. Okay, so you see how I had to, kind of play around with the numbers. Where's it all going to fit? That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going back over so that you can see it. Okay, so let's do that with average temperature. So again, look for your smallest and your largest values. That's what's going to tell you what your interval needs to be, okay? If you have a really big range, like if your smallest number is like 100 and your biggest number is like 5,000, you're going to need a pretty big interval, okay? Like by 500s, okay? But if you have a really small range, you're going to have really small intervals, like by half or 1s, okay? So here, our smallest value is 1, our largest value looks like it's 22. Okay, so I'm going to play around with that. Let's see. If I start at 0, let me see how many lines I have. So I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I have 16 lines. So that's not quite enough for going up by 1s. Okay, which is okay. But maybe I can go by another one. Obviously, I wouldn't want to go by 10s because I would be 10, 20, 30. I would only use this much. That would be way too small. Okay, so let's go by, I'm going to go by 4s. And you'll be like, why are you going by 4s, Miss Summers? So I have 4, 8, make sure I can do my math right, 12, 15, 18, 22, 4, 8, 12. Y'all, see, I didn't do my math right. That's supposed to be 16, 20, 24, excuse me, 24, 28. Okay, so we'll use about that much, which is better. Okay, so you might be like, why didn't you just go by 2s? Well, I could have gone by 2s, but then I would have 2, 4, 6, 8. Those numbers would be really crunched together, and it would be really hard to read. So you can leave a little space. That's okay, as long as your numbers are going by the same interval. Okay, I didn't go from 0 to 4 to 5 to 12 to 34. Okay, that's what matters. Okay, so now I have nice even intervals, nice labels. Now I can actually graph, okay? From here, it's just like playing Battleship. So I'm going to find my x value, which in this case is 5. So x value is down here, 5. 5 is here. And I'm going to meet that at 22. I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use my green Sharpie so that you can see. And you might be like, well, Miss Summers, 22 isn't on here. It goes from 20 to 24. Well, 22 is halfway in between those. So that would be right here. It's okay if that number is not on the graph. You kind of know where it is because it's basically a number line. Okay, my next values are 10 and 19. So there's 10. Again, 19 is not on here, but it's going to be about halfway between 18 and 20. So I'm going to go straight up and straight across. And it's right about there. Okay, on a line graph, I'm not going to do any other points. Actually, I'll do one more set of points just so for my next step. Our next values are 15 and 17. So I go to 15, which is down here. 17 is halfway between 16 and 18. So I'm not on this line, I'm halfway, and I'm going straight up, and I'm making a dot. Now, on a line graph, we are going to connect these dots. We are going to connect them from the middle of each dot to the next one. We do play connect the dots, okay? If you leave it not connected, that's technically a scatter plot, which is something slightly different. So yeah, we're going to connect the lines, okay? So that's a line graph. So let's look at another graph, how I would know to make a bar graph. So I have this other set of data, okay, where I have seed type and number of birds observed. So let's say I'm doing an experiment. I want to see how many birds each food type attracts, like which food is a bird's favorite, basically. Okay, so remember my title. So I could just say seed types and birds. All right, that's all it's got to be. Just let them know what you're talking about. All right, I'm going to make my axes. All right, my y is my vertical axis, or my dependent variable, and my x-axis is my independent variable. All right, so it looks like that. So now you ask yourself, what is independent? What is the dependent? Does the number of birds change the seed type, or does the seed type change the number of birds? The seed type is the independent variable. I can change that. I can either spray out corn or thistle or millet or whatever the heck these things are, whatevskis. The seed type determines how many birds show up, because the birds are like, corn? Yes, I love corn. And be like, Jerry, there's corn over there. And Jerry's like, all right, let's go. Okay? So, I'm going to put number of birds observed. Obviously, that doesn't need a unit because it's not a measurement. It is a measurement, but it doesn't need a unit because it's just a number. And then seed type is down here. Again, I'm going to make sure I leave plenty of space. All right. Is this a bar graph or a line graph? Well, look at seed type. Am I going to be putting numbers down here or words? Because seed type is qualitative, it's a qualitative, I can spell qualitative, I'm going to use a bar graph, okay? With bar graphs, I see, like, you might feel like one bar has to be exactly like one of these little columns wide. They can be bigger than that. If you need more space to write out, that's okay. Remember, we want to use up our space. All right, so I'll just do the first, I'll do the first two and the last two. Okay, so I'm going to have 4. So I'll skip 1, 2, 3. And I'll say this is corn. I'll have corn be right here. And then I'll skip 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'll say this is mixed seed. 1, 2, 3. I'll have one right here. This will be flax. And then 1, 2, 3. I'll have this one as millet. Okay? So these lines that I've drawn right here, those just represent where my bars are going to be. They're like the base of the building. Okay. So as far as my numbers go, millet is my smallest value. There were 7 birds there. And it looks like corn was the biggest. There were 23. So what numbers can I put? Obviously, I'm going to skip some spaces. I don't need a ton of numbers, but I want to make sure I use up all the graph. Let's see how many lines we have, because we need to go from 7 to 23. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we have 18. Can't go by ones. That's okay. No big deal. What if I go by, you know what, let's do, so I'll put 0 here, and then 4, 8, 12, make sure I'm counting right, 16, haha, couldn't get me, 20, 24, 28. So it's the exact same intervals I use, I just happen to like 4s. So each space represents 2. Okay? So from here, you do need your straight edge. Corn has 23. So I'm going to draw this bar up to where it says 23. So 23 is halfway between 22 and 24. So right about there. Bring it across. And now I have a completed bar. Okay? I always like to add a little bit of color. It just makes it a little easier to distinguish the bars, not just a bunch of black lines on a black and white piece of paper. All right, mixed seed is 21, so I'm going to find 21 halfway between 22 and 20. Come across, doot, 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 doot. Boop. Use my straight edge to make my bars. So you see how my bars are nice and spaced out. They're nice and even and pretty. All right, this is going to make it easier for your pupils to read. Okay, remember in science, graphs are a way to share data. Okay, it's a way of communicating, and you want to make sure that your communication is nice and clear. Okay, so that's how you go about making a bar and a line graph, how you tell the difference between the two, when is one appropriate versus not. Hope you found this helpful. Yeah, and I'll see you next week.